Let me tell you about a man who painted beauty out of pain, a man who turned loneliness into light. He gave the world more than 2,000 paintings, yet he died thinking he'd failed. He never knew fame. He never felt success. People rejected him, misunderstood him, and left him alone in the quiet. But he never put down his brush. He painted until the very end, not for money, not for applause, but because something deep inside him was begging to come alive in color. This isn't just a story about art. It's about what happens when the world doesn't understand you, and you keep creating anyway. It's about finding meaning in madness, about how pain can turn into power, and how beauty can outlive the artist who created it. Vincent van Gogh's life was a storm of struggle. Yet from that storm came some of the most emotional, unforgettable paintings in human history. He didn't paint what he saw. He painted what he felt. And that's what made him immortal. So get ready for a story that will move you, break you, and rebuild you, one brushstroke at a time. Now, before we begin, here's something special. This story isn't just good for your soul. It's great for your English too. You'll hear real, emotional language, the kind that helps you feel every word and understand it deeply. So sit back, dim the lights, and let me take you into the world of Vincent van Gogh, the man who painted his pain. This story doesn't begin with colors or canvases. It begins with silence. Vincent van Gogh was born on March 30th, 1853, in a small Dutch village called Zundert. The skies there were gray, the land flat, the wind sharp, but the silence wasn't only outside. It lived inside him. Here's something few people know. Vincent was born exactly a year after his parents' first child had died. That baby's name was also Vincent. Same name, same birthday, same graveyard. Imagine walking past a tombstone with your own name on it. Every Sunday, on the way to church, that's what he saw. Vincent van Gogh, born March 30th, 1852, died March 30th, 1852. He was born into grief, not joy, and he carried more than just a name. He carried the ghost of a brother he never knew. His father was a Protestant pastor, strict, distant, a man of discipline. His mother was serious, religious, and focused. Vincent wasn't playful or easy to raise. He was quiet, sensitive, different. He'd spend hours walking alone through fields, staring at flowers, whispering to the wind. He connected more with nature than with people. Other kids didn't get him. Teachers didn't get him. Even his parents couldn't understand him. But there was one person who did, his younger brother, Theo. Theo was gentle, patient, and kind. He listened when no one else would. And that bond between them, the love of two brothers, would later become one of the most important relationships in all of art history. Without Theo, there would be no Vincent. That's not poetry. That's truth. But as a boy, Vincent never dreamed of becoming a painter. He didn't think he was good at anything. At 11, his parents sent him to a boarding school. He hated it. He was bullied, isolated, miserable. He wrote home begging to return, but his father told him, "You must become a man." So he stayed. Vincent always tried to be what others wanted him to be. He wanted to please, to belong, to matter. But no matter how hard he tried, he always felt like he was falling short. At 16, he got a job thanks to his uncle, working for an art dealership called Fluency. First in The Hague, then London, then Paris. For the first time, art surrounded him every day, but not through painting. He was selling it. And for a brief moment, he was happy. He walked through the streets of London with a book tucked in his coat pocket, dreaming. He fell in love with a young woman named Ursula, the daughter of his landlady. He thought she might be the one. He confessed his feelings, heart wide open. But she laughed. She was already engaged. That rejection broke something inside him. He believed love would come if you were honest. But life wasn't fair, and love didn't play by his rules. After that, something changed in him. He became quiet, serious, consumed by religion. He stopped caring about sales, stopped talking to customers, started quoting the Bible at work. Eventually, they fired him. But instead of anger, he took it as a sign. Maybe, he thought, this is what I'm meant to do, to serve God. So he became a preacher, just like his father. He went to Belgium, to the coal mines, where people lived in darkness and hunger. He gave away his clothes, shared his food, lived as they did. He wanted to feel their pain, to suffer with them, to understand their souls. He believed suffering was holy. But even the church turned him away. They said he was too extreme, too emotional, too unstable. And once again, Vincent was cast out. By 27, he had failed at everything. Failed as a son, as a salesman, as a preacher, as a man. No job, no love, no future. But in that emptiness, something inside him whispered, "Then I'll be a painter." He wandered the gray streets of Borinage, the coal region of Belgium, broke and lost, but with one last spark inside him, a need to express what words could no longer hold. He lived among miners with blackened faces and cracked hands, watched wives wash clothes in frozen rivers, saw barefoot children go hungry. He shared their bread, slept on their floors, wore their torn clothes. The church had called him too extreme. But Vincent didn't care anymore. He wasn't trying to please anyone now. He was finally learning to listen to the only voice that mattered, his own. All I ever wanted was to understand what suffering really meant, and maybe, somehow, capture it. That's when it hit me. If I couldn't preach with words, maybe I could preach with color. So I began to draw what I saw around me. The miners, the mothers, the children with hungry eyes. Their faces were tired, their lives hard, but they were real. My sketches were rough, clumsy even, but honest. Every line carried a feeling. For the first time, I felt like I was doing something that mattered, something that came straight from my heart. That's when I decided, I'll be an artist. It was 1880. I was 27. Most painters start young. I was only beginning when others were already giving up. I didn't have money for paints or brushes, or even a decent canvas. I used charcoal, pencils, cheap paper, whatever I could find. I taught myself anatomy and perspective from old books, studied the Bible for symbolism, and spent hours watching the light move across the fields, the shadows crawl across faces. I believed you couldn't paint life until you'd lived it. My first real teacher was my cousin by marriage, Anton Mauve, a respected painter from The Hague. He taught me how to mix oil paints, how to stretch a canvas, how to make a picture come alive. I admired him deeply, but like most relationships in my life, that one soon turned complicated. I wasn't easy to deal with. I was emotional, impatient, obsessive. I'd work for days without sleeping, without eating, chasing something I couldn't quite explain. I didn't want perfection, I wanted truth. One day, Mauve told me, "You have talent, Vincent, but you must learn to control your emotions." And I said, if I control my emotions, there will be no art. That was my truth and my curse. While living in The Hague, I met a woman named Clasina Maria Hornick, though everyone called her Scene. She had lived a hard life, a seamstress, a prostitute, and a single mother raising her little girl alone. Society looked down on her, but I saw something different. I saw pain, and I wanted to protect her. I invited her and her daughter to live with me. I gave them food, a bed, and care. I painted her again and again, holding her child, sitting by the window sewing, lost in quiet thought. For me, it wasn't about desire. It was compassion. I wanted to show that even the poorest people deserve dignity, beauty, and love. But society didn't see it that way. My family was horrified. My father called the relationship sinful. Even Mauve turned away from me. I defended Scene with everything I had, but deep down, the weight of it all began to crush me. After 2 years, I couldn't take it anymore. I was broke, exhausted, and emotionally torn apart. I left her. It destroyed me inside. But I knew I couldn't save anyone if I couldn't even save myself. You can see that heartbreak in my early paintings, dark browns, deep grays, heavy shadows. They were sad, yes, but they were honest. After leaving The Hague, I went back to live with my parents in a small Dutch village called Nuenen. I set up a tiny studio in their home and started painting peasants and laborers, the kind of people I'd always admired. My father still didn't believe in me. He thought painting was just a childish dream. But I worked harder than ever. I'd wake up before sunrise, walk through the muddy fields, study the faces of farmers and women bent over the land. I didn't want to paint rich people or pretty gardens. I wanted to paint truth, the dirt, the sweat, the hands that fed the nation. In 1885, after 5 long years of learning and failure, I painted what I believed was my first true masterpiece, The Potato Eaters. It showed a poor family sitting around a dim table, eating potatoes with their hands. Their faces were rough, their skin dark, their eyes tired, but there was warmth in the way they sat together. I wanted to show that these people had earned their meal with honest work. That painting was everything I believed in: earthy, real, emotional. But when I showed it to critics, they tore it apart. They said it was ugly, unrefined, amateurish. I was crushed, but not defeated. I wrote to Theo, "I'd rather paint one honest face full of wrinkles than 100 smooth ones full of lies." That was who I was, someone who cared more about truth than perfection. Throughout those years, I wrote hundreds of letters to Theo. Those letters became my lifeline, filled with gratitude, frustration, dreams, and doubts. He wasn't just my brother. He was my best friend, my only real support, and the reason I could keep painting at all. Theo worked as an art dealer in Paris and sent me small sums every month so I could afford paint and canvas. In return, I sent him sketches, finished pieces, and long letters about everything. The way sunlight turned gold over the wheat fields, my loneliness, my anger, my love for art, my fear of failure. Those letters are why the world now knows what was inside my heart. But life in Nuenen wasn't peaceful. The villagers thought I was strange. They whispered behind my back because I often painted women in the fields or small cottages. Even my relationship with my father grew colder by the day. Then, in 1885, tragedy struck. My father died suddenly of a heart attack. And though no one said it, I blamed myself. I thought my stubbornness had pushed him too far. I carried that guilt like a weight I couldn't put down. But instead of crying, I painted. I tried to turn my grief into color. Day after day, I stood in the cold, mixing paints with shaking hands, searching for beauty inside my sadness. But deep down, I knew I needed change. I needed air, light, and a new beginning. By 1886, I made my choice. I packed my brushes, my paints, and what little hope I had left, and boarded a train to Paris, the city where Theo lived. I wanted to see what the modern art world looked like, to meet other painters, to learn, to grow. As the train pulled away from that quiet Dutch village that had never really understood me, I looked out the window and whispered to myself, "This time, things will be different." I didn't know it yet, but Paris would change everything. It would bring me color, friendship, rivalry, and a slow descent into madness. In February of 1886, I arrived in Paris. My brother Theo was already there, working as an art dealer. When he saw me at the station, he hugged me like family does, but I could see the shock in his eyes. I looked like a ghost. Thin, pale, sick from exhaustion. I hadn't eaten properly in days. My clothes were worn through, but in my hands, I carried what mattered most, my paintings. When Theo unwrapped them, he fell silent. Those dark, heavy pieces, soaked in browns and shadows, they didn't belong in Paris anymore. The art world here had moved on. A revolution was happening. Impressionism. At first, I couldn't stand it. These new artists painted in bright pinks, blues, yellows, chasing the light, not the pain. To me, it felt shallow, almost childish. Where was the struggle? The soul? But then something shifted. I saw the works of Claude Monet, Edouard Manet, Camille Pissarro, and I began to understand. They weren't just painting objects. They were painting how light felt. They showed me that shadows could glow, that color could sing. Their canvases weren't dark, yet somehow they were alive. I didn't imitate them. I absorbed them. Slowly, quietly, my own work began to change. The browns disappeared. In came oranges, blues, greens, purples, and golds. I left the peasants behind and started painting city streets, bridges, flowers, cafes, even myself. In just 2 years, I became unrecognizable. My strokes grew faster, bolder. I used thick paint, impasto, to build texture and movement into every inch. I stopped painting what I saw and started painting what I felt. My self-portraits turned into a diary of emotion. In one, I look calm. In another, burning. In some, I look like I haven't slept in days, because I hadn't. I painted 3, sometimes 4 canvases a day. I barely ate. I lived on coffee, tobacco, and restlessness. I once said, I put my heart and soul into my work, and I lose my mind in the process. And I could feel that happening. But Paris wasn't just about color, it was about people. Theo introduced me to a circle of artists, many unknown then, but destined to become legends. Paul Gauguin, proud and mysterious. Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, wild and brilliant. Émile Bernard, young and daring. Georges Seurat, the quiet master of pointillism. We'd sit in smoky cafes, drinking cheap wine, arguing about truth, beauty, madness, and art. It was chaos, and I loved it. But I didn't always fit in. I was too blunt, too emotional, too much. Some admired me, others avoided me. But even those who kept their distance respected one thing, my fire. I wasn't chasing fame. I was chasing truth. Through it all, Theo was my anchor. He paid for everything: food, rent, paint, medicine. Even when I ignored him or vanished for days, he never gave up on me. He tried selling my paintings, but no one wanted them. Too messy, they said. Too wild. He'll never make it. Theo once wrote, "My brother may be mad, but his madness is pure." I can only imagine how much that hurt him, to see the genius others couldn't. As my paintings grew brighter, my mind grew darker. I started drinking absinthe, that green poison that numbs the body but burns the soul. I barely ate. I painted all night, slept all day. My letters to Theo were filled with hope and despair in the same breath. I was 35, no wife, no children, no peace. Just art, loneliness, and Theo. The hallucinations began. The voices. The long nights of silence. But my art came alive. It glowed. It pulsed. By 1888, Paris had drained me completely. The noise, the competition, the constant motion, it was too much. I needed sunlight, space, quiet. So I packed my canvases, my brushes, and whatever sanity I had left, and I left for Arles, a small town in the south of France. Golden fields, olive trees, blue skies. It was everything Paris wasn't. For the first time in years, I felt peace. I rented a small yellow house at 2 Place Lamartine. I painted the walls myself, filled the rooms with my work, set my easel by the window to catch the light. I called it the Yellow House. But it wasn't just a home, it was my dream. I wanted to build a community of artists who would live, paint, argue, and grow together. I wanted an art family, a brotherhood bound by color and emotion. In those early months, I painted like a man possessed. The southern light overwhelmed me, the yellows, the greens, the fire in the air. I painted wheat fields bending in the wind, bridges glowing in the sun, and a night sky that seemed to swirl with life. For a moment, I believed I'd found what I'd been searching for, a place where color could finally breathe. My room was small and simple, a chair, shoes, cups, and all of it filled with some strange peace. Every little thing in life became an emotion. And the sunflowers, simple flowers, and under my hands they became sacred. The petals glow, the stems bend, the colors scream without words. I drew 7 versions, alive, wilted, open, closed. Even in wilting there is beauty. I wrote, "The sunflower is mine." And it's true. No one has ever seen them like this. I worked day and night, and Theo still supported me from Paris. Money was scarce, critics ignored the paintings, but Theo believed. He invited another artist, Paul Gauguin, to come to the Yellow House and paint with us. When Gauguin arrived, I felt magic. We walked in the fields, drank wine, worked late into the night. But we were very different. I was emotional and tender. He was proud and distant. I wanted to share. He wanted to control. Love and fear intertwined in a dangerous tangle. On December 23, 1888, the thunder broke. We argued, gone left, and I lost control. I cut off my left ear, wrapped it in a cloth, and took it to the woman. In the morning, I was found almost dead. The yellow house, my dream of community, was destroyed. The hospital became my refuge and studio. Sick, exhausted, I painted the walls, the doctors, the garden. I wrote letters to Theo, apologizing, asking for forgiveness. I'm not crazy, or not always. But sometimes the darkness is louder than the light. Theo never gave up. Paint when you can, rest when you can't. I'm here. His love kept me afloat. In May 1889, I decided to go to the asylum for the insane at St. Remy. Quietly, surrounded by gardens and fields, I took my brushes and paints with me. My little window square of the sky became a whole world. Olive groves, cypresses, wheat fields, blue mountains, all were my training, my music. I painted myself, my pain, my spirit. The swirling irises, the olive trees dancing in the wind, the tall black cypresses. Everything was my inner storm. One night I couldn't sleep. I looked up at the sky, and it was alive. The stars were spinning, the moon was shining, the wind was swaying the trees. I picked up a brush and painted Starry Night. Not as it looked, but as I felt it. Chaos inside, peace outside. The stars are burning, and the village is slumbering under a cosmic storm. I wrote to Theo, why shouldn't the shining points be as accessible as the black dots on the map of France? Just as we take the train to Terres or Rouen, we take death to reach the star. He never looked at the stars with despair, always with wonder. Even when his world was breaking apart, he kept believing there was still light somewhere. But peace never stayed long. Some days I couldn't paint at all. The seizures came like storms, sudden, violent. I'd collapse, shake, wake up in confusion, sometimes tearing at my own clothes, screaming, refusing food. The voices, the nightmares, the silence, they haunted me. Yet, after every breakdown, I'd pick up the brush again. I didn't fight my madness. I painted through it. I once wrote to Theo, there are moments when I'm terribly anxious, and I don't know why. But I must go on working as if nothing had happened. That line, I think, says everything. I painted even when I couldn't trust my own mind. During my time in St. Remy, I wrote over 150 letters to Theo, some of the most tender words ever shared between two brothers. I described each painting, the colors, the strokes, the mood. I told him how the cypresses fascinated me, how the wheat fields made me think of eternity, how I felt both trapped and alive at the same time. And always, I thanked him for his patience, his love, his faith. Theo never stopped believing. He kept writing back, sending supplies, encouragement, even paintings from others so I could study their work. That connection was my lifeline, my proof that I still mattered to someone. In that single year inside the asylum, I painted more than 150 works, an impossible number, considering how often I was ill. The Starry Night, wheat field with cypresses, the irises, the reaper, the garden of the asylum, and so many others, each one alive, moving, breathing. The skies swirled, the trees twisted, the fields trembled. Every painting was both a prayer and a scream. The doctors noticed that when I painted, I seemed calm. They encouraged me to keep going. Painting became my medicine, my reason to keep living. By early 1890, I was better, calmer, focused. I wanted to see the world again, to smell Paris, to hear voices, to feel life outside these walls. Then Theo wrote. He was a father now. He named his son Vincent Willem van Gogh. My name. When I read those words, I cried. For once, I felt like maybe my life meant something. But beneath that joy, I sensed something darker. Theo was sick, overworked, broke. The letters spoke of exhaustion, of money running out, of days growing heavier. I began to feel like I was the weight on his shoulders. I wrote back, if I could be of some worth, if only to ease your burden, I should be glad. But it seems I am fit for nothing. I wanted to try again. After a year in St. Remy, the doctors finally let me go. May 1890, I set foot on the land of Auvers-sur-Oise, carrying with me paints, canvases, and an insatiable hunger for light. The village smelled of wheat and rain, quiet, green, like another world just next to Paris. The vast sky was freedom. I settled in a small room in the attic of a simple inn, one window, a wooden bed, a narrow table, a chair. I paid 3.5 francs a day from Theo's money. Near the village lived Dr. Paul GOGH, a strange, kind, in love with art, who understood me immediately. He asked me to paint everything that soothes the soul, gardens, roofs, wheat fields. And I painted. In 70 days, over 70 paintings, almost one every day. The church of Avera under a blue sky, wheat fields with ravens circling under a stormy horizon, portraits, huts, endless waves of golden ears of corn. The locals stopped, watched me stand in the sun with red hair, a straw hat, and a blue cloak, sometimes whispering, sometimes singing, with no sign of fatigue. "It's peaceful here," I wrote to GOGH. "The village is beautiful. I could work here forever, but eternity was near." I wrote to Theo almost every day. He was a father now, and I felt both joy and guilt. Theo was weak, money was tight, health was poor, and I was a burden. I risked my life for my work, and my mind is half dead. What can I do but move on? I can't be different, I wrote. And then that Sunday came. I went to the wheat field, carrying paints and a revolver that the owner had probably given me to scare away the birds. The sun shone on the golden ears of corn. The crows were circling. In the evening a shot rang out. I stumbled to the inn, holding my stomach, went up to my room and fell onto the bed. I wanted to end my life, I whispered. The bullet could not be removed. The pain was terrible, but I remained calm. "The grief will last forever," I said quietly. The next morning Theo arrived. We talked quietly for hours. I asked him not to blame anyone but himself. That evening, July 29th, 1890, I took my last breath in the arms of my brother, who had never stopped believing in me. I was 37. 2 days later, the village saw me off on my last journey. The coffin was surrounded by sunflowers, wildflowers, and yellow dahlias. My paintings were placed on the walls. People stood in silence. Dr. GOGH only said, "He was a great artist, more than all of us put together. He only wanted to express what was in his heart." Theo was unable to speak. His health collapsed, and 6 months later he died, aged 33. He was reburied next to me. My sister-in-law, Joanna, dedicated her life to showing the world my true face, not as a madman, but as a dreamer and an artist. Today my paintings hang in the most famous museums in the world. But money and fame are not more important. They show that sincerity, emotions, courage, and beauty can be born from pain. I painted the way I felt, not the way they were told. I lived poor, sick, unnoticed, but I left the world a priceless gift. Every stroke is a heartbeat. Every color is a cry for understanding. I painted when my hands trembled, when my mind collapsed, when no one believed except Theo. And this is the main thing. Sometimes one believer in you is enough. I proved that you can be broken and still create light. You can die unnoticed and become eternal. Art is the truth of the heart. And even now, standing in front of my paintings, people cry because they understand. To feel deeply is not weakness, it is art. I wasn't painting the starry night. I was painting what it means to live.